right, we're back.
All right. Hey. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with
Jenna. I'm Jenna, the intern.
She's our intern, and she's also a recent graduate of Loyola's Environmental Sustainability Institute, or the Institute of Environmental
Sustainability.
Go Loyola.
Yeah.
We've had Loyola students with us for the past 3 or 4 summers now, working as interns, and it's been a really wonderful gift to the space and to the garden overall, and really gives a glimpse of what management of these spaces is like for these graduates, and then choose what their next path will be. Speaking of pathways, we are now in what we call the Sunnyside Savanna. This goes from Sunnyside Avenue up to Wilson Avenue. So if you consider that with the expansion, the community garden will then be 4 city blocks long. It's a decent amount of space. This one, we did not plant ourselves, which is pretty amazing. At the time that we were founding the community garden, the American Indian Center of Chicago was located about a block away from this property. And they decided to plant this space as a white oak savanna. A white oak savanna is exactly the kind of native planting that would have existed here in Chicago before anyone moved in, any concrete was poured. This is how our city would have looked like originally, which is really, really cool. Also, when they planted it, they did something that was called a controlled burn. So they planted hundreds of different species of seeds in the space and took notes as to what was here already and what they were planting, and then did a scorch of the ground. That helps to kill off a lot of weeds, and it's a really sustainable way to manage a space over time. It also would have happened in a savanna naturally with every lightning storm that occurred. It would have burned the savanna, and then it would have sprung back up. When they finished that burn and reestablished the space, the amount of native plants, savanna plants, doubled, which meant that there was a whole other population of seeds that were waiting in the soil, just waiting for a burn in order to bring them back to our city, which is so cool to think about. We do eventually hope to do another controlled burn in this space. You can keep an eye out on Facebook and you can follow us along. Probably in the fall, maybe next spring, we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, the American Indian Center, their headquarters moved to another part of the city, over in Albany Park. And it was just far enough away where it was hard for their volunteers to get over here. So being the local community garden, we stepped up and adopted this space with the RCC, our local Ravenswood Chamber. And we are now the maintainers of this beautiful planting, full of native medicinal plants that would have been so important to the original people groups of Chicago. We are thrilled to be their partner in this and to be able to take on this important project and to offer it to our neighbors. It's a really cool space. A lot of people don't really realize it's ours yet because it just happened this last year, but it's been a lot of fun. You can see we still have lawn here. So this is what the community garden would have looked like in year 1 when we were getting started. Eventually this lawn will also give way to more native plants. As the donations roll in, we'll be ripping up that lawn and moving with it. And we do have a walking path through here. I'm going to go ahead of you because it is exactly like a harvest trail would have been, which means that it is not paved and it is a little bit of a hiking adventure. But it is a lot of fun to see all of the plants that are happening in here. So we're just going to take a little walk and talk through it. When we got here today, we had a rabbit hanging out in this path, and when it went off, it went right up the pathway, which made me pretty excited. It made me feel like maybe the footpaths that would have been in this city actually ended up being wildlife corridors as well. But we're going to continue our way through. You can see one of the dune birds here, and here as well. Some more of our local pentstemons, and a lot of different native grasses. Now when you move into a space like this, it's easy to look at it and think that it is really messy. But if you also think about it, without human intervention, this is what these spaces would look like. Now we're rebuilding it, right, after construction waste and debris has occurred. And so it's a bit of an uphill battle. We still have a lot of plants here that we are not welcome having in this space. And so we will have weed sheets available on our Facebook page so that you can take a look and identify the common problems in this space and come help us pull weeds. But we're letting a lot of our seeds drop. We're letting a lot of our grasses and things kind of do their thing here, because in the long run, it's going to help replenish this space over time, as nature intended. It's pretty cool.
And we've got a question about what kind of snakes are in this area.
Ah, yes. Ooh, I wonder who asked that. So I was talking to our commissioner on the walk in between our videos, and we were saying that over time, this space has really changed. You know, when we moved in about 4 years ago, this was pretty fresh construction debris from the rebuilding of the metro tracks and bridges on this side. And so it was a real big decision what would be done with the space, and bringing in a community garden and this space for the American Indian Center just felt like a wonderful fit for the community. but a lot of the ecology of the space, a lot of the plants and the animals were not really around. They'd given up on the space because of the construction debris. So we planted it with these natives, we put in a lot of coneflowers and trees and things, and the first year we saw birds. The next year we started to see butterflies. Then the butterflies and bees started coming in like gangbusters. And then in the fourth year we started to see snakes, which is very funny. Snakes give a lot of people the EBGBs, myself included, but they're actually a really good indicator of the health of a garden. Snakes are kind of higher on the predatory chain of animals, and that means that you have enough bio-life, you have enough in your ecosystem to support that. And so it's a really good sign, and they're actually really good at help keeping rodent populations and other things in check. So we're happy to have them. To date, we've only seen one kind of snake, and it is a common garter snake. If you look it up, it is like black and white yellow with just long stripes going down the body of it, and they're really terrified of people. So the snakes move in about every winter, or they hide from us really well during the summer. And then in the beginning of the year, we see them a little bit more prevalently. Then they kind of hang out and do their own thing. Eventually they nest in our tall grasses and return next spring to surprise us all. We usually see their babies in the fall, and they're about yay big. They're pretty cute when they don't surprise you. But yeah, that's the only one that we've seen in this area. Maybe eventually we'll see more signs of life of different things, but it's really encouraging to just see them returning to the space at all. We really celebrate their presence, which is really cool. Yeah, cool. Good question. We're going to just take a little bit more of a walk and let you appreciate it. We're having a lot of things that are just getting ready to bloom, so you can see all this greenery pushing up from the ground. Another really cool thing about this space is that we get to talk about a program called the Tree Keepers. Tree Keepers are put together by the Open Lands Foundation, which is another organization that really advocates for the care of green spaces, especially on public lands and especially native plants. And Tree Keepers is a volunteer arborist service, which is really cool. And they work with open spaces like this, not necessarily homeowners, but nonprofits, in order to help tend to the health of their trees. So whenever we take over a new space or in a new space of our garden, we invite the Tree Keepers in. They help us to identify the key species that we need to be looking after and identify any issues with the health of our trees so that we can keep them going. They also come and visit us 2 to 3 times a year with a training group and do all of our tree trimming for us, which is really cool. So shout out to the Tree Keepers. We love you. Awesome. We've also got some of those hazelnuts returning into this space. That is part of the native flora and fauna of our city, so we're really excited to put some here. And you can see we've got some large stones behind us. I want to take you there before we end this video. This walking path will take you all the way up to Sunnyside Avenue. So if you ever just need a little bit of a feel of a nature hike, you have it in your own neighborhood, which is amazing. These stones are actually really cool. These are, I believe they're limestones, and they were the base of the railroad tracks here. So when they did the construction on the space, we were able to salvage these stones and keep them from going into landscape waste. And instead they become our benches and gathering area for volunteer days here in the garden, which is really cool. Again, as a reminder to all of you, this is a space that has really specialized needs because we are doing native restoration and ecological restoration. And so the volunteer tasks here are a little bit more specific, but we're going to post, whoa, we got people coming in. We're going to post all of our top weeds on our Facebook page so that you know what they look like and can come in and help us with this space. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And we'll tell you when the next set of volunteer days are ready after the COVID crisis. I want to thank all of you for taking time to walk through our spaces with us today. I wish you could all be here with us in person, and one day we will be again soon. In the meantime, please stay tuned to our Facebook page, our Instagram, and you can also email us at mmcggrows with your questions about donating to our expansion. We would really love to have your help in order to make these 4 blocks this beautiful gift to the community and to have them do all that they can for us. These are spaces that many times are just kind of forgotten in our city, these small bits of green space. But with a dedicated group of neighbors and volunteers, you can create something beautiful that really gives back a lot. So I hope you will join us. Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned. Bye.
Bye, thanks.